black American soldier found a Japanese prisoner of war, girl tied to a post. The sign said traitor. I stood there, trembling, as the tall black American soldier cut through the ropes that bound me to the wooden post. My wrists burned where the rough hemp had dug into my flesh. Every muscle in my body ached from being tied up for so long, but I refused to show weakness. I had been taught that Americans were brutal monsters, especially the black ones. Yet here he was, helping me. "You're safe now," he said in a low, gentle voice that surprised me. His words were careful, measured, like he was speaking to a frightened animal. I suppose that's what I must have looked like to him. I wanted to hate him. I needed to hate him. That's what a loyal Japanese citizen would do. But the kindness in his eyes made it difficult to maintain my anger. Still, I kept my guard up. This could be a trick. The sign that had been pinned to my chest, the one that branded me a traitor, fell to the ground. I stared at it, the crude English letters seeming to mock me. My own people had done this to me, not the Americans. The thought made my chest tighten with shame and confusion. The soldier, I could see his rank was sergeant from his uniform, took a cautious step back after freeing me, giving me space. My legs wobbled as I tried to stand straight. Hours of being bound had left them weak and tingling with pins and needles. Without meaning to, I stumbled forward. The sergeant's hand shot out to steady me, but he pulled it back quickly when I flinched away from his touch. "Can you walk?" he asked. I nodded stiffly, though I wasn't entirely sure. My pride wouldn't let me admit weakness in front of him. He began leading me away from the post, walking slowly enough that I could keep up despite my unsteady legs. Other American soldiers passed by, their eyes lingering on me with curiosity and suspicion, but none showed the cruelty I had been warned about. There were no harsh words, no raised weapons, no threats. I kept stealing glances at the sergeant as we walked. His face remained calm, professional, but there was something in his eyes, a kind of understanding that I couldn't quite comprehend. Why would an American soldier, especially a black one, show kindness to a Japanese prisoner? Everything I had been taught said this shouldn't be happening. The camp stretched out around us, rows of wooden barracks, guard towers, and the ever-present wire fence that marked the boundaries of my world now. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the packed dirt paths. Other prisoners watched from doorways and windows as we passed, their faces showing mixtures of contempt and pity. I kept my eyes down, unable to meet their stares. My head spun with questions. What would happen to me now? Would I be punished? Interrogated? The uncertainty made my stomach churn, but the sergeant's steady presence beside me offered an unexpected comfort, even though I didn't want to admit it. His boots kicked up small clouds of dust as we walked, and I found myself focusing on that simple detail to keep my racing thoughts at bay. I was Japanese. He was American. I was a prisoner. He was my captor. Everything about this situation felt wrong, yet here we were, walking side by side through the camp, neither enemy nor friend, existing in some strange space in between. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. The medical tent's canvas walls flutter in the afternoon breeze. I sit on a metal chair, my hands trembling as I stare at the bowl of rice and cup of water before me. The food smells good, better than anything I've had in weeks, but my stomach feels tied in knots. Every movement around me makes me flinch. The black soldier who freed me, James, I heard someone call him, stands a few feet away, his presence both unsettling and oddly reassuring. He keeps his distance but watches with concerned eyes. I don't understand why he's being kind to me. We're enemies. This must be some sort of trick. Other American soldiers pass through the tent, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. They glare at me with hard eyes, whispering among themselves. I catch words like Jap and spy. My fingers dig into my palms. I know what they think of me. To them, I'm just another enemy to hate. A nurse approaches with bandages, and I shrink away. She needs medical attention, she says to James. I shake my head violently. No, I whisper. The first word I've spoken since being freed. My voice sounds strange to my own ears. Only him. I point at James. The other soldiers exchange glances, their suspicion obvious. James steps forward slowly, his hands raised to show he means no harm. It's okay, he says softly. No one here will hurt you. But I've heard such promises before. During the war, we were taught that Americans would say anything to extract information. He looks tired, his uniform wrinkled and dusty. There's something in his eyes, a weariness that goes beyond physical exhaustion. He reaches for a blanket from a nearby cot and holds it out to me. I hesitate before taking it, wrapping it around my shoulders like armor. "Sir," one of the soldiers calls out, "we should put her in solitary. Can't trust her type." James's jaw tightens. She's not a threat. She needs medical care, not isolation. The tent flap opens, and a tall officer enters, Colonel Hansen, based on how the others snap to attention. He surveys the scene with cold efficiency. "What's the situation here, Sergeant Walker?" His voice is clipped, authoritative. "Sir, this prisoner needs proper medical attention and quarters in the women's section." James responds firmly. "She's been traumatized enough." Colonel Hansen studies me for a long moment. "Very well. Place her in the female prisoner of war section. Standard supervision protocols." Two soldiers near the entrance mutter to each other. "Traitor got what she deserved," one says. "Probably selling out her own people." James's shoulders stiffen at their words. I watch him clench and unclench his fists, though he remains silent. The hatred in those soldiers' voices makes my skin crawl. I pull the blanket tighter, trying to make myself invisible. The food before me grows cold, untouched. My stomach growls, but fear keeps me from eating. I don't know what will happen next, what cruelties might be waiting. The only thing I'm certain of is that I trust no one, not even the soldier who showed me kindness. The whispers follow me everywhere in the camp. They're like sharp needles in my back, each one carrying the weight of shame. "Traitor," they say. "American sympathizer." Even when I can't hear the words, I feel their stares burning into me. I keep my head down as I fold the endless piles of military uniforms in the camp's laundry. The work isn't hard, but the isolation makes every minute feel like hours. The other, Japanese prisoners won't come near me. They turn away when I walk past, as if my disgrace might spread to them like a disease. The American soldiers are different than I expected. They don't beat us or starve us like we were told they would. Still, I can't trust their kindness. It feels like a trap, waiting to spring shut. Sergeant Walker, James, as he asks me to call him, visits often. Today, he brings me a worn paperback book and an extra apple. I don't understand why he's so kind to me. His dark skin marks him as different from the other American soldiers, yet he wears their uniform with pride. How can he serve a country that treats him as less than human? It's a question I dare not ask. "You should eat more," he says, placing the apple next to my folding station. "The food here isn't great, but it'll keep your strength up." I don't respond. I can't. The words stick in my throat like rice paper. Instead, I focus on the crisp lines of the sheets I'm folding, trying to make them perfect. Maybe if I work hard enough, the shame will wash away. James sits quietly beside me, watching my hands move over the fabric. His presence is oddly comforting, though I hate myself for feeling that way. We stay like this for what feels like hours, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. The peace shatters when Takashi appears. His face is twisted with rage as he storms toward us. "Look at you," he spits in Japanese, "sitting here with the enemy like a faithful dog." My hands freeze on the laundry. Takashi's words cut deeper than any knife could. "You disgrace your family, your country," he continues, his voice rising. "Your father would rather see you dead than consorting with Americans." The truth in his words breaks something inside me. My legs give way, and I sink to my knees, tears streaming down my face. Around us, other prisoners gather, their muttered agreement with Takashi's words, a chorus of condemnation. "She betrays us all," someone whispers. "She dishonors Japan." I can barely breathe through my sobs. They're right. I am everything they say I am. Weak, dishonorable, a traitor to my people. Father would be ashamed to see me now. James jumps to his feet, his face dark with anger. I've never seen him like this before. He takes a threatening step toward Takashi, his fists clenched at his sides. But before anything can happen, Colonel Hansen appears, his commanding presence cutting through the tension like a knife. He positions himself between James and Takashi, his voice stern as he addresses the Japanese prisoner. "That's enough," he says. "Return to your barracks immediately. Any more attempts to cause discord among the prisoners will result in disciplinary action." Takashi backs away, but his eyes never leave me. The contempt in his gaze burns worse than any summer sun. James storms off toward Takashi's barracks, but Colonel Hanson's sharp order stops him. Sergeant Walker, stand down. I remain on my knees, surrounded by the scattered laundry, my tears soaking into the clean uniforms. The shame threatens to swallow me whole. I sit across from James in the mess hall, my hands trembling slightly as I hold the metal spoon. The room feels too big, too open, and I can feel the stares of other soldiers burning into my back. The soup in front of me steams gently, its aroma reminding me how hungry I am. It's okay, James says softly, his voice barely carrying over the clatter of dishes and murmured conversations. The food here isn't fancy, but it's good. We follow strict guidelines about meals. I dip my spoon into the soup, watching the broth swirl. James continues speaking, his words measured and careful. The Geneva Convention has rules about how prisoners should be treated. That includes proper food, shelter, and medical care. He tears his piece of bread in half, demonstrating how to dip it in the soup. Everyone gets the same portions. The bread is different from what I'm used to, but it's fresh. I take a small bite, then another. The soup is simple but filling, with vegetables and small pieces of meat that remind me of home, though the seasonings are all wrong. As I eat, James explains more about the camp, the schedules, the rules, the structures in place to keep order. I know it's hard to trust us, he says, his dark eyes sincere, but not everyone here wants to cause harm. Something in his voice makes me look up. There's a weight to his words that feels personal, and I find myself truly listening as he begins to speak about his life in America. He tells me about growing up in the South, about the whites-only signs and the constant fear. His words paint a picture I never expected, an America divided against itself, where someone like James faces battles even in his own country. I joined the army thinking things might be different, he says, pushing his empty bowl aside. But even here, we're segregated. Black soldiers, white soldiers, separate units, separate everything. I study his face, seeing for the first time the complexity behind his uniform. Here is someone who understands what it means to be seen as less than human, to be judged before being known. My hand moves to the small apple I've been saving, tucked away in my pocket. It's not much, just a piece of fruit I managed to keep from yesterday's meal, but something compels me to share it. I place it on the table between us, then carefully push it toward him. James looks startled, his eyes widening slightly at the gesture. For a moment, neither of us moves. The apple sits there, a small bridge across our vast divide. He reaches for it slowly, as if handling something precious. "Thank you," he says, and I hear genuine gratitude in his voice. He takes out his knife and cuts it in half, offering one piece back to me. We eat in silence, but it's different now. Less strained, more companionable. When we finish, I find myself meeting his gaze without the usual fear or anger. There's something else there now, a tiny crack in the wall I've built around myself. For the first time since my capture, I see James not as an American soldier, but as someone who might understand what it means to be caught between duty and dignity, between who you are and who others say you should be. I watch from my corner as new prisoners file into the camp, their shoulders slumped, their eyes downcast. The same look I wore when I first arrived. Through the window of the women's barracks, I can see Sergeant Walker directing them to their assigned areas. His gentle authority stands out among the other guards. He doesn't shout or threaten, just guides with firm patience. One prisoner catches my attention. His face is hard, angular, filled with barely contained rage. When Sergeant Walker approaches him, the man, Takashi, I learn later, jerks away as if touched by something unclean. My stomach twists. I know that look of disgust all too well. It's the same one I gave James. When he first found me tied to that post, the days blur together. I keep to myself in the barracks, avoiding the sideways glances and whispered accusations from both sides. The American women prisoners see me as the enemy. The Japanese see me as a traitor. I am nowhere and nothing. One afternoon, after another meal spent alone, I retreat to my usual corner. The weight of isolation crushes me until I can't help but bury my face in my hands. I don't cry. I won't give them that satisfaction, but I wish I could disappear. "Miss Takeda?" I look up to find James standing there, holding out what looks like his own lunch ration. The sight of food makes my stomach growl, though I had eaten just hours ago. Still, pride makes me hesitate. "Please," he says softly. "You look like you could use this more than me." Something in his voice breaks through my resolve. I accept the offering, and to my surprise, he sits down beside me. We eat in silence for a while, until he starts telling me about his grandmother's cooking back home in Georgia. The way he describes her sweet potato pie makes my mouth water. My mother, I say before I can stop myself, she made the best miso soup. The words feel strange on my tongue. I haven't spoken of home in so long. Every morning, the smell would wake me up. James smiles, encouraging me to continue. Soon I'm telling him about my father, a proud officer who taught me that duty to our country was everything. How I watched him march off to war, straight-backed and certain. How I tried to live up to his example, even as doubt crept in. I was so young when it all started, I whisper. We all were. They told us it was for the glory of Japan, but I trail off, the words catching in my throat. James nods, understanding in his eyes. He tells me about his own family's struggles, generations of slavery, followed by decades of discrimination. My grandfather fought in the last war, he says. Came home a hero, but they still made him use the colored entrance at the general store. I look at him then, really look at him. Behind his uniform, I see someone who knows what it means to be caught between duty and doubt, between pride and pain, someone who understands. I never wanted this war. I admit, my voice barely audible. I wanted to make my father proud, to be a good daughter. I didn't understand what it would mean. The setting sun casts long shadows through the window as we finish our meal. Thank you, I say, meaning more than just the food. For the first time since my capture, I feel something close to peace. Through the window of my barracks, I watch another group of prisoners shuffle in. Their faces mirror the despair I felt when I first arrived. Hollow-eyed, shoulders slumped under the weight of defeat. Some glance my way, their expressions hardening when they recognize me as the traitor. Sergeant Walker directs them with quiet authority, his movements precise but gentle. He catches my eye for a moment, offering a slight nod. These small gestures of kindness still confuse me, even after all these weeks. They go against everything I was taught about Americans, especially about men like him. The other prisoners avoid me during meal times, leaving an empty space around my table like I carry some contagious disease. Their whispers follow me everywhere. Traitor, coward, shame to Japan. Each word stings, but I force myself to hold my head high, though inside I'm crumbling. One afternoon, I overhear American soldiers talking near my window. Their voices carry clearly in the still air. That Japanese girl, the one they found tied up, she could be passing information to the others. Yeah, Colonel Hansen's considering moving her to another camp. Too risky keeping her here. My heart pounds against my ribs. Another camp? The thought of starting over, facing new suspicions and hatred, makes my legs weak. I sink onto my thin mattress, trying to steady my breathing. Later, I hear Sergeant Walker's voice, raised in argument with Colonel Hansen outside the barracks. Sir, she's been through enough. Moving her now would be cruel. Walker, you know how complicated these situations are. We can't risk. She's not a risk. Sir, she's just scared and alone. Their voices fade as they walk away, but their words echo in my mind. Scared and alone. Yes, that's exactly what I am. The walls of the barracks seem to close in around me. I can't breathe, can't think. Without planning, without thinking, I'm on my feet and running, past the mess hall, past the watching eyes, toward the fence. Freedom calls to me like a siren song. Maybe if I run far enough I can escape the shame, the whispers, the constant fear. My legs pump harder, my lungs burn. Hannah, stop! Sergeant Walker's voice cuts through my panic. His hand catches my arm just as I reach the outer fence. I collapse against him, sobbing. All my carefully maintained composure shatters. I can't stay. Here, I gasp between sobs. They all hate me. Both sides hate me. Nobody hates you, Hannah. His voice is gentle, but I can hear the strain in it. But this was dangerous. You know what has to happen now. I do know. The next few days pass in a blur of darkness and silence, confined to my barracks. It's punishment for attempting escape, but it feels more like mercy than the hostile stares outside. Through my window, I see Sergeant Walker standing guard in the evening shadows. his figure straight and steady against the darkening sky. He remains there for hours, a silent sentinel, as if his presence alone could protect me from the demons that chase me, both real and imagined. I sit alone in my bunk, the silence of the camp pressing in around me. The news arrived this morning. Japan has surrendered. The war is over. But instead of joy, I feel hollow inside, like someone has scooped out my heart and replaced it with stone. Other prisoners are celebrating, crying tears of relief. I hear their voices through the thin walls, a mix of Japanese and broken English. But I can't join them. How can I celebrate when everything I once believed in has crumbled? I trace my fingers over the rough wool blanket James gave me weeks ago. It still smells faintly of military-issue soap. The kindness in that simple gesture seems so far away now. "Hana?" James's familiar voice comes from the doorway. "May I come in?" I nod, not trusting my voice. He sits on the edge of my bunk, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. There's something different about him today, a heaviness in his shoulders that wasn't there before. "I'm being discharged next week," he says quietly, "going back to civilian life." The words hit me like a physical blow. Of course he's leaving. The war is over. But somehow I hadn't let myself think about what that meant. "I understand," I managed to say, though my throat feels tight. "What will you do?" he asks. "When you return to Japan?" I shake my head. I don't know anymore. Everything I was taught to believe. It was all. I struggle to find the words, like a house of paper in a storm. James is quiet for a long moment. "You could start fresh," he suggests. "Build something new." "How?" I ask, and my voice cracks. "How do you build anything when everything is broken?" "One piece at a time," he says simply, "like we did here. Remember that first meal we shared?" I find myself smiling despite everything. "You gave me your extra bread. And you shared your fruit," he adds. Small things, but they matter. Suddenly, I need him to understand something. "Will you?" I hesitate, then force myself to continue. "Will you visit me? In Japan? Once everything is settled?" His dark eyes meet mine, and he nods. The simple gesture holds more meaning than any words could convey. But 3 days later, everything changes. An officer arrives with papers. I'm to be sent back to Japan immediately. Not for reunification with my family, but to face charges of treason. My cooperation with the Americans, which I had thought would prove my humanity, may now condemn me. When James hears the news, he comes running to my barracks. His face is flushed, his uniform askew. "I won't let them do this," he says fiercely. "I'll speak for you. Tell them how you helped maintain peace in the camp, how you showed kindness to others." "James," I whisper, "you don't have to." "Yes, I do." He cuts me off. "You're my friend, Hana, and I protect my friends. I want to tell him so many things. How his kindness saved me, how he showed me that humanity exists even in the darkest places. But all I can manage is, thank you, for everything." He takes my hand, squeezing it gently. "I promise you, I will do everything I can to help you. This isn't over." I watch him leave, his back straight and determined, and for the first time since hearing the news of Japan's surrender, I feel something other than despair. It's small, like a candle flame in the phyllantry. Darkness, but it's there. Hope. I sit on my thin mattress, staring at my hands. The news of Japan's surrender still feels unreal, like a dream I can't wake from. Around me, the other prisoners whisper among themselves about going home, their voices a mix of relief and worry. But I can't join in their conversations. For them, the war's end means freedom. For me, it only brings more questions. Through the barracks window, I watch American soldiers going about their duties. They seem different now, less rigid, more relaxed. Some even smile as they pass by. But their smiles don't reach me. I feel trapped between two worlds, belonging to neither. Traitor. The word follows me like a shadow. Even now, days after the surrender, I hear it in the way some of my fellow prisoners look at me. Takashi approaches me during lunch, his eyes hard with judgment. "You think the Americans will protect you now?" he says in Japanese, his voice low and bitter. "When we return home, everyone will know what you did here." I lower my eyes to my bowl of rice. "I did nothing wrong," I whisper, but the words sound hollow even to me. "You let them break you." Takashi spits. You accepted their kindness like a dog begging for scraps. His words cut deep because part of me believes them. I've spent sleepless nights wondering if I betrayed my people by accepting James's help, by allowing myself to see the humanity in our captors. The shame burns in my chest. Later that evening, James finds me sitting alone in the barracks. He doesn't say anything at first, just settles down beside me. The silence between us is comfortable now, unlike the fearful quiet of our first meetings. You're thinking too hard again, he says finally, his voice gentle. I pull my knees to my chest. How can I face my family? I ask. My father was a soldier. He taught me about honor, about duty, and here I am, alive while others died fighting. James shifts beside me. You didn't start this war, he says firmly. None of us did. We're just trying to survive it. His words make me look up. In the dim light, I can see the sincerity in his eyes. But I accepted help from the enemy, I whisper. No, he corrects me. You accepted kindness from another human being. That's not weakness, Hana. That's strength. Something in his words breaks through the wall of shame I've built around myself. Maybe he's right. Maybe surviving isn't the same as betraying. The next morning, Colonel Hansen visits our barracks. His presence makes everyone sit straighter, more alert. He reads from a list, announcing transfers to different camps for repatriation. When he calls my name, my heart stops. Miss Takeda, he says formally, you'll be transferred next week. However, you must first appear before a military tribunal. The words hit me like a physical blow. A tribunal. Of course, my attempted escape, my interactions with the Americans, everything will be examined and judged. I feel the stares of the other prisoners, boring into my back. Through the window, I catch sight of James standing outside. He's watching, and even from this distance, I can see the concern in his stance. Our eyes meet briefly, and in that moment, I understand something I couldn't before. Whatever happens next, the kindness he showed me was real. No tribunal can take that away. The days have grown strangely quiet at Camp McCoy. I sit on my bunk, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeams that filter through the barrack windows. The emptiness feels heavy, like the silence before a storm. More prisoners leave each day, heading home to rebuild their lives. But I remain behind, waiting for my own uncertain fate. Tonight, as the sun sets and paints the sky in shades of orange and pink, I find myself talking to James. We sit on wooden crates behind the mess hall, away from prying eyes. The words I've held inside for so long finally spill out. My father, I begin, my voice barely above a whisper. He was everything I wanted to be. Strong, proud, honorable. I twist my hands in my lap, remembering his stern face, the way he would stand so straight in his military uniform. He taught me that honor was worth more than life itself, that serving our emperor, our nation, was the highest calling. James listens quietly, his dark eyes focused on me with that gentle attention that still surprises me. I tell him about the cherry blossoms in our garden, about the ceremonies my father would perform, about the lessons in discipline and duty that filled my childhood. I thought I understood what honor meant, I say, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. But now, everything is different. Everything I believed. My voice trails off. James shifts on his crate, leaning forward slightly. I know something about that, he says. About believing in something that doesn't believe in you back. He tells me about growing up in Georgia, about drinking from separate water fountains and sitting in the back of buses. His voice grows, thick as he describes putting on an American uniform, fighting for a country that still sees him as less than human. Sometimes honor isn't what other people tell you it is, he says. Sometimes it's just doing what's right, even when everyone else says you're wrong. The weight in my chest grows heavier. James, I whisper, I don't think I can go back. The words feel like a betrayal, but they're true. My family. They would never understand. Being captured was shameful enough, but now. I gesture helplessly at myself, at what I've become, someone who has learned to see the enemy as human, someone who questions everything she once believed. James reaches out, then stops himself, his hand falling back to his side. You can't control what happened to you, Hana, but you can choose what happens next. Do you? I hesitate. The question feeling too big, too important. Do you believe in forgiveness? His eyes meet mine, and I see something there. Understanding, maybe, or shared pain. He nods slowly. I do. But I've learned it's not always about forgiving others. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. I look at him for a long moment, feeling something shift inside me. Not hope, exactly, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. The sky has darkened to purple, and the first stars are appearing overhead. In this moment, the war feels very far away, and yet its shadow still lies between us, reminding us of all that has been lost, and all that might still be found. I sit in a hard wooden chair, my hands trembling in my lap as I face the tribunal panel. The temporary structure feels suffocating, despite its size. Morning light filters through dusty windows, casting long shadows across the floor. American and Japanese officers sit behind a long table, their faces stern and unreadable. Their uniforms, both familiar and foreign, remind me of how far I've come from everything I once knew. My throat feels dry as they begin their questioning. An interpreter stands beside me, though I understand most of their English now. Perhaps that's part of what they hold against me, how easily I adapted to life among the Americans. Did you willingly accept aid from American soldiers? The Japanese officer's voice is sharp, cutting through the tense air. Yes, I reply, my voice barely above a whisper. I force myself to speak louder. Yes, I did. And did you share information about other prisoners? No, I never. I start to protest, but another question comes before I can finish. Why were you found tied to that post? What did you do to deserve such treatment from your fellow prisoners? The questions keep coming, each one designed to trap me, to prove my disloyalty. I answer as honestly as I can, but I see the disapproval in their eyes. They've already decided I'm guilty. Of what exactly? I'm not sure. Of surviving? Of accepting kindness? Of learning that the enemy might not be an enemy after all? From the corner of my eye, I catch a glimpse of James standing at the back of the room. His presence gives me strength, even though I know he shouldn't be here. He stands straight and tall, his uniform pristine, but I can see the tension in his shoulders. The questioning continues for what feels like hours. They ask about my father, about my life in Japan, about every interaction I've had with the Americans. Each answer seems to dig me deeper into a hole I can't escape. Just when I think I can't take any more, I hear movement from the back of the room. My heart stops as James steps forward. He wasn't supposed to speak, wasn't even supposed to be here. Sir, he addresses the panel, his voice steady and clear. I request permission to speak on behalf of Miss Takeda. The panel members exchange glances, clearly surprised by this interruption. The American colonel raises an eyebrow but nods slowly. James speaks with a passion I've never heard before, his words painting a picture of humanity in the midst of war. He talks about finding me tied to that post, about the strength it took to survive, about the courage to accept kindness from those I'd been taught to hate. This war has taught us all about hatred, he says, but it's also shown us the power of compassion. Miss Takeda's actions weren't those of a traitor. They were those of someone brave enough to see beyond the barriers we've built. The panel dismisses everyone while they deliberate. Hours pass in agonizing silence until finally, an officer approaches me with the news. My sentence has been delayed. It's not freedom, not exactly, but it's hope. Back in the barracks, I find James waiting. Thank you, I whisper, knowing the words aren't enough to express my gratitude. We're not done fighting yet, he says quietly. But for now, you're safe. The days stretch on, blending into one another like watercolors in the rain. I sit in my barracks, counting the hours between James's visits, trying to make sense of my place in this strange, new world. The war is over, but I feel suspended between two lives. The one I left behind in Japan, and whatever uncertain future awaits me here. James still comes to see me every day, though I can tell the weight of everything unsaid sits heavily between us. Sometimes we talk about small things, the weather, the camp's daily routines, the changing faces as more prisoners are processed and sent home. Other times, we sit in companionable silence, both lost in our own thoughts about what comes next. This evening, James appears at my door just as the sun begins to set. Would you like to take a walk? He asks softly. I nod, grateful for any chance to escape the confines of my thoughts. He leads me to the camp's small chapel, a humble wooden building that seems to hold its own kind of peace. Inside, The fading sunlight filters through simple windows, casting long shadows across empty pews. We sit side by side, letting the silence wrap around us like a familiar blanket. My father, I begin hesitantly, my voice barely above a whisper. He always taught me that honor was everything, that duty to our emperor, to our country, was the highest calling. I pause, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. But now, I don't know what honor means anymore. How can I return home, face my family, when I've been marked as a traitor? James listens quietly, his presence steady and reassuring. When I fall silent, he turns to me with understanding in his eyes. You know, he says, I grew up in Mississippi. My daddy taught me about honor too, but a different kind. He taught me how to hold my head high when white folks looked right through me like I wasn't even human. Taught me to find dignity, even when the world tried to strip it away. He looks down at his hands. Sometimes I feel guilty too, serving a country that doesn't even see me as a full person. But then I remember what my daddy said. True honor isn't about what others think of you. It's about staying true to your own heart. His words touch something deep inside me, and I feel tears welling up in my eyes. We sit there, two people from opposite sides of the world, united by our experiences of shame and betrayal. In this quiet chapel, our differences seem to fade away, leaving only our shared humanity. Suddenly, the camp's loudspeakers crackle to life, breaking our moment of connection. The announcement echoes through the empty chapel. My tribunal hearing has been postponed indefinitely. My heart skips a beat. Not quite freedom, not quite condemnation, but something in between. The sun has almost set when James walks me back to my barracks. The camp is quiet except for our footsteps on the packed earth. I promise you, James says as we reach my door, I'll do everything I can to make sure you're treated fairly. I look up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. Thank you, I whisper, and I mean it more deeply than ever before. In this moment, I feel something shift inside me. Not quite hope, but perhaps the beginning of it. The days have begun to blur together since the tribunal, but something inside me has shifted. Each morning, when I wake up in the barracks, I no longer feel the crushing weight of shame that once threatened to suffocate me. Instead, I find myself looking forward to James's visits, to our quiet conversations that have become a lifeline in this strange limbo between war and peace. Today, as I fold laundry in the camp's workroom, I catch myself humming an old Japanese lullaby my mother used to sing. The sound startles me. I haven't sung in months, maybe years. A few weeks ago, such a simple act would have felt like betrayal, but now it feels like remembering a part of myself I thought I'd lost. James arrives in the afternoon, as he usually does, carrying an extra portion of bread from the mess hall. Thought you might be hungry, he says with that gentle smile that has become so familiar. I accept it gratefully, no longer feeling the conflict I once did about taking food from an American. We sit together on a wooden bench outside the barracks, watching other prisoners go about their daily routines. Some still cast suspicious glances our way, but I've learned to let their judgment slide off me like rainwater. James has taught me that, though he never said it in words. I made something, I tell him, reaching into my pocket. My fingers close around the small wooden carving I've spent the last few nights working on. It's crude, made with borrowed tools and scrap wood, but I've poured my heart into every cut and groove. In Japan, we believe that gifts carry the spirit of the giver. I place the small carving in his palm. A simple bird in flight. It's to thank you, I explain, my voice barely above a whisper, for showing me that kindness can exist even in the darkest places. James turns the carving over in his hands, studying it with careful attention. This is beautiful, Hana, he says softly. But you don't need to. Thank me. I do, I insist. This bird, it represents new beginnings, like the ones you've helped me believe in again. The next morning brings unexpected news. A messenger arrives with official papers. My case is being reconsidered by a higher tribunal. The possibility of not having to return to Japan hangs in the air like a fragile soap bubble. I'm not sure how to feel about it. Relief mingles with anxiety, hope with uncertainty. That evening, James finds me sitting outside, looking up at the stars. He settles beside me without a word, and we share a comfortable silence. The night air is cool, and the stars seem impossibly bright. What will you do? He asks finally. If they let you choose? I take a deep breath, considering the question. I don't know, I admit. Everything I thought I knew about my future has changed. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. James nods, understanding in his eyes. I've been thinking about going back home, he says. After everything. It won't be the same, but nothing ever is, I suppose. We sit together under the vast Wisconsin sky, two people caught in the currents of history, yet somehow finding our own path through it. For the first time since my capture, I feel something like peace settling in my heart. The camp feels different now. Each day, more faces disappear, leaving behind empty bunks and quiet spaces where voices once filled the air. I watch from my window as groups of prisoners board trucks and buses, heading home to rebuild their lives. But I remain here, caught between two worlds, neither of which feels entirely mine anymore. This morning, I saw 3 more families leave. They carried small bags of belongings, their faces a mix of joy and uncertainty. I touched the wooden charm in my pocket, the one I gave to James, and wondered what my own departure would look like. James still visits every day, though his uniform looks crisper now, ready for his own journey home. I can see the weight of departure in his eyes, too. He tries to hide it behind his gentle smile, but I know he's wrestling with leaving things unfinished here. More left today, I say when he stops by my barracks. Yeah, he nods, leaning against the doorframe. Colonel says the camp will be mostly empty by next month. The words hang between us, heavy with meaning. That's when Private Morrison appears, a clipboard in his hand. Miss Takeda, there's news about your status. My heart jumps into my throat. James straightens, his expression alert. You've been approved for repatriation, Morrison says, checking his papers. You'll be on the transport to Japan next week. The news hits me like a physical blow. Japan, home, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. How can I face my father, my family? What would I tell them about my time here? About the Americans who showed me kindness when I expected only cruelty? Thank you, I managed to say, but my voice sounds distant to my own ears. After Morrison leaves, James moves closer. You okay? I shake my head, unable to speak for a moment. I don't know if I can go back, I finally whisper. Everything is different now. I'm different. James is quiet for a long moment. You know, he says carefully, there might be other options. America's changing. Maybe you could find a place here. The suggestion startles me. Stay in America? The thought had never occurred to me, yet it doesn't feel as strange as it should. Before I can respond, we hear footsteps approaching. It's Colonel Hansen himself. Miss Takeda, he says formally. I wanted to inform you personally. The command has reviewed your case. Given your unique circumstances here, and the treatment you've received, we've decided to release you under a special provision. I feel James tense beside me. You'll return to Japan as scheduled, Hansen continues. But you'll be free to travel back to the United States in the future, if you choose. Your record will reflect our recognition of your cooperation. The news leaves me speechless. Freedom, real freedom. Not just to go home, but to choose my path forward. It's more than I ever expected, yet it fills me with a new kind of fear. The future stretches before me, vast and unknown. Later that afternoon, I stand at the camp gates, my small bag at my feet. The transport bus idles nearby, its engine humming in the quiet air. Other prisoners file past me, climbing aboard, but I linger for a moment. Looking back, I see James standing near the guard post. He raises his hand in a small wave, and I return it. For the first time since I arrived at this camp, I feel no anger, no fear, just gratitude for the unexpected friendship that grew in this unlikely place. I gaze out at the cherry blossoms from my family's garden in Tokyo, their delicate pink petals dancing in the spring breeze. The war feels like a lifetime ago, yet the memories of Camp McCoy remain vivid in my mind. My fingers trace the edges of James's latest letter, his familiar handwriting bringing comfort even from across the ocean. The first few months back in Japan were harder than I could have imagined. When I arrived home, my father wouldn't look me in the eye. Mother cried, but not tears of joy, tears of shame. The neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and old friends crossed the street to avoid me. I was marked, not just as a former prisoner, but as someone who had accepted American kindness. But I couldn't deny the truth I had learned. Each letter I write to James helps me piece together my story, not as others see it, but as I lived it. The cherry trees are blooming early this year. I write to him. They remind me of the kindness you showed me when everyone else saw only an enemy. I tell him about my struggles, knowing he'll understand. In his letters, he shares his own difficulties adjusting to life back in America. The war might be over, but the battle against prejudice continues. He writes about facing discrimination despite having served his country, about doors still closed to him because of the color of his skin. Yet he maintains his gentle spirit, the same one that moved him to cut me free from that post so long ago. My father finally spoke to me one evening, after months of silence. I had been helping Mother tend to her garden, trying to find peace in the simple act of nurturing life from the soil. He stood watching me for a long time before speaking. "Tell me about the American camp," he said quietly. So I did. I told him about James, about his kindness when he found me tied to that post. I spoke of the other soldiers who treated me with respect, who saw me as a human being rather than just an enemy. I described how they followed their own rules of honor, even toward those they were supposed to hate. My father listened silently, his face unreadable. When I finished, he simply nodded and walked away. But something changed that day. Slowly, the wall between us began to crumble. Now, as I write another letter to James, I feel a sense of peace I never thought possible during those dark days of war. "Life here is different," I write. "Not easier, but different. I am learning to live with the past without letting it define me. Your friendship taught me that kindness can bridge any divide, even between supposed enemies." I pause, watching a petal drift past my window. The Japan I returned to is changing, rebuilding itself from the ashes of war. Like the cherry blossoms that return each spring, hope blooms even after the harshest winter. Sometimes I continue writing. I think about that post where you found me, about the sign that branded me a traitor. But I know now that the real betrayal would have been to deny the humanity in others, to refuse the hand of friendship when it was offered. You taught me that, James. In his last letter, James wrote about starting a small business in his hometown. Despite the challenges he faces, he remains optimistic. His strength continues to inspire me, reminding me that we can choose how to respond to the world's cruelty. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.